Welcome into Locked On Phillies. In today's episode, we're going to discuss what may be the most important thing about the Philadelphia Phillies offseason. And no, it's not a player or any type of acquisition. I'll tell you what it is on today's Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I am your host, Connor Thomas, credentialed Phillies media member, 97.5 The Fanatic weekend host, part of the morning show. We cover Philly sports for a while now, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. A fun Friday episode ahead of us here on Locked On Phillies. A little light, a little bit of theory stuff today. And what I'm going to start with today is the key to the Philadelphia Phillies offseason. And it's one word. It's not a player. It's not someone that's going to be putting on a jersey. It's not even like a thing or anything like that. It's a concept. It's what some people would call a virtue. The most important thing that we're going to need and that the Phillies are going to need over the course of this offseason is patience. That's right, patience. Let me tell you why. So when you look at what the Philadelphia Phillies are looking to accomplish this year, it works in both ways. And frankly, most teams in Major League Baseball, patience, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of teams in Major League Baseball can also employ the same strategy. But the Phillies are very much in that camp. Here's what I mean. The top guys you're going after are part of a really, really talented free agent class, and that's the shortstop market. Dave Dombrowski, and we already broke it down in an episode earlier this week, Dave Dombrowski basically told you in his press conference that, hey, we're going to be looking at more depth when it comes to the starting rotation. If it was starting pitching that the Phillies were going after, well, you may have wanted them to be more aggressive. When you look at a list that includes Jacob deGrom and Justin Verlander, Carlos Rodon, who we talked about, Nathan Eovaldi, Chris Bassett, these are all guys that they're going to command interest and you want to go get them. But starting pitching is weird because there's so many options out there, right? It's not just a one person plays the position. So there's always a significant amount of depth, even though a Jacob deGrom and a Justin Verlander do not become free agents all that often. Well, you're still looking at a situation where there's enough to go around, even if it's not your primary option. And the shortstop market now kind of mirrors that, right? If it was a situation like first base, where Anthony Rizzo is the crown jewel of the free agent class, and I believe Anthony Rizzo already locked up. Let me just see. I think I saw, you got to forgive me, I take my nap during the middle of the day because I'm up at 4 a.m. Every day. So, yeah, Aaron Rizzo re-signed with the Yankees already. But like Aaron Rizzo, why do I keep saying it? Because I'm reading an article here that's talking about Aaron Judge as well. Anthony Rizzo was like clearly the guy that was top of the first base class. There were some Phillies fans clamoring to say, hey, go get him instead of Rhys Hoskins, which I don't think would have been prudent because it's not a significant upgrade like Trey Turner would be over Edmundo Sosa. There is, for all of Rhys Hoskins' faults, I know he can't field the baseball, this, that, and the other thing. But there's a bigger gap between Trey Turner and Edmundo Sosa than there is between Anthony Rizzo and Rhys Hoskins. But my point is, when there's just like one top guy at a position, and that's the position that you're looking to address, that's when aggressiveness is important. But not when you have four top guys available at shortstop. I'll tell you the names again. You're going to hear me say these names over and over and over again. Trey Turner, Carlos Correa, Xander Bogaerts, and Dansby Swanson. The reason why patience is important is because you're going to have to expect those players to be patient. The person who blinks first is potentially going to be losing tens of millions of dollars because they're going to be the ones setting the market. And these guys are also close in skill level. There are minute details, and Trey Turner's clearly, I think, the favored one, the best one when you look at the combination of age and defensive ability and hitting with power and being a five-tool player, all of that good stuff, the speed he employs. But there's not a huge drop-off between Trey Turner and Xander Bogaerts and Carlos Correa and Dansby Swanson. Like, those are guys that are all going to be building their market value off of each other's contracts. And so they're going to want to hold out as long as possible. They're going to want to make it similar to a situation like when Bryce Harper and Manny Machado held out forever a couple years back before Machado ended up going to San Diego. Bryce ends up coming here, obviously. So, yeah, patience is important for the Philadelphia Phillies in that, and not blinking, not worrying, hey, man, we got, because it can go the other way, right? Those players want to be patient because they want the market to be set before they sign. But if you're a team like the Phillies and you get antsy, you could end up really overpaying as well. And that could be a situation. It wouldn't be fun for those other players, but they could significantly overpay because they're getting cold feet. Like, man, none of these guys are signing. We haven't done anything yet. Screw it. Trey Turner, take all $300 million. And we'll see how they structure out whatever deal they give to whatever big free agent. But I think patience is important there. Also, with the starting pitching, to go back to that, patience is important in the starting pitching because you're going to find the best bargains at the end of the road. And there are going to be teams that feel the need to aggressively pursue starting pitching that would be near the top of their rotation. And for some teams, the top of the rotation guys are middle of the pack free agents because their rotation's not as good. Like Kyle Gibson, Jameson Taillon, Taijuan Walker, Zach Eflin, Ross Stripling, one of the Zach Greinke, Michael Wacha, guys like this. Now they're not top guys. They're not bottom of the barrel guys, and I understand all those guys aren't on the same skill level, but those are the guys that are going to be like, someone might throw the bag at Zach Eflin. We talked about that in the plan for the Philadelphia Phillies offseason. You obviously can't bring him back if someone pays him like a 2 or a 3, because that's not what he's going to be on your team. But if you're patient, one or two of those guys is going to fall through the cracks, and then you could probably get them at a premium later in the season. There's a key. When's the deadline for MLB teams to sign free agents ahead of the 2023 season? There is none. Michael Conforto last year was one of the big outfield prospects available. He didn't sign with anybody. Then he had an issue, he had an injury with his shoulder, and he took off the entire 2022 season. So now he's part of this free agent class again. My point is, he sat out the whole year, and part of it was injury, but he started heading in because, well, you were looking at a situation where teams were wary of stuff, and he wanted more money than anyone would have paid him, and ended up not playing at all. So these players can hold out a long time. Patience is key. And then that also is, it's echoed in the relief pitcher market as well. Same type of thing as the pitchers, or as the starting pitchers. When you look at guys like David Price and David Robertson and Seth Lugo and Jose Alvarez, not Jose Alvarado, Jose Alvarez. When you look at Jake McGee, Carlos Estevez, these are all guys that are middle of the road relief pitchers that might not make a huge difference. But if you're patient, again, this is the key. If you're patient, you can get those guys at a premium at the end. That works when there's multiple high-level guys at the same position, or when there's a huge middle area of talent at the position. And that's the starting pitching, the relief pitching, and the shortstop market fit into those two categories. So those are the Phillies' bread and butter. That's why patience is the key for the Philadelphia Phillies and for the fan base as well. I know it's tough for us because you want to see your team do something. You want to see them make a signing. You want to see Dave Dombrowski go ahead and take care of business and get Trey Turner and know that you've got him locked down for the next 5 or 6 years or whatever. I get all that. But remember how patience paid off with the Bryce Harper sweepstakes from the fan base. This is not all that other stuff is from the front office point of view or from the players who are available point of view. This is from the fans' point of view. If it comes to January and Trey Turner's still out there, you're like, why haven't they done something yet? Take a deep breath. It's okay. As long as they haven't signed with somebody else, Trey Turner, Xander Bogaerts, Carlos Correa, Dansby Swanson, it's never too late for the Philadelphia Phillies to add them. So remember that patience is a virtue over Major League Baseball free agency, especially when it comes to such a talented free agent class as this one. So that's why that word, the P word, patience, is going to be uber important for Dave Dombrowski and Sam Fold, the rest of the Phillies front office, the free agents available out there on the market, and you as a fan of the Philadelphia Phillies, so you're not driving yourself crazy all offseason wondering when the move is coming. I believe they're doing something big. I believe they're making multiple additions to the team. I believe that they're going to be interesting veteran acquisitions in the starting pitching and relief pitching roles. And I think this team comes out significantly better on opening day 2023 than they were on opening day 2022. And that 2022 team, all they were was 2 games away from winning the World Series. But to get there, remember, you got to have patience. Now, coming up next, we're going to jump back into our player reviews and we're going to talk about the other ace on the staff. Or is he an ace? What do you consider him? And how does the postseason weigh in when we look at Aaron Nola's season in review? We will discuss that next in the middle segment of Locked On Phillies. First, though, I want to tell you about Bet Online. Today's show is presented by Bet Online. They're our presenting sponsor for today, so thank you to Bet Online as always. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. You got football, you got basketball, you got soccer, you got esports. We got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head to the website today. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't wait till Sunday. No, you don't have to wait for the weekend. Go ahead and do it today on Friday. Go ahead and check them out. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, it's time for Aaron Nola's season in review, his player review. And Nola was an interesting one. There were points in 2022 when he looked like Aaron Nola of 2018, when he was the Cy Young runner-up and was an absolute monster. And then there were points where it looked like he cracked under pressure in the postseason. And there were points in the regular season where he had some really rough stretches. But all in all, here's where the numbers finished out for Aaron Nola in 2022. Well, he had a 3.25 ERA. You'll take that. You'll absolutely take that. It wasn't quite where Zach Wheeler's was, but that's pretty darn good at the major league level. He was looking at a total of 235 strikeouts, the most of his career, and his strikeout to walk ratio, 8.10. 8.1 strikeouts to every walk. That was the highest in baseball this year. That was incredible. You know why? Because when he struck out those 235 batters, he only walked 29 in 205 innings pitched. That's preposterous. Now, he gave up 168 hits. He gave up 19 home runs, which actually 19 home runs isn't terrible. But the 75 runs, 74 earned, is one of the higher marks of his career. Trails only 2021 when he gave up 93 earned runs and 2019 when he gave up 87 earned runs. And then this was the third highest of his career, but it was also the second most innings pitched in his career, trailing only 2018 when he threw 212 on his way to the, not Cy Young runner-up, third place in the Cy Young voting. But the whip .961 shows you just how good Aaron Nola was with his command this year. And command was a problem in 2021. He didn't have two-strike command. He would get 2 strikes on a batter, and then he would plate something, they'd hit it out of the yard, or he would be too worried about giving something hittable to a batter, not trusting his stuff, that he would nibble around the outside of the strike zone, and he walked significantly more batters, back in 2021. I mean, just look at the difference. 39 to 29, 10 more in 2021. In 2019, he walked 80 batters. That was the roughest season when it came to his command. And he's been working on stuff since then. In the shortened 2020 season, he pitched 71 innings, right? He walked 23 batters. In 205 innings, he only walked 6 more batters this year. So the command was awesome from Aaron Nola. It was his best asset, and the strikeouts, well, he's still a great strikeout pitcher. Cleared 230 strikeouts. That's just absolutely impressive. Near the top of Major League Baseball in that. So a great season. But then you also have to factor in the playoff trouble, because his last couple starts in the playoffs against San Diego and against Houston, frankly, he wasn't good enough. He wasn't the ace you need him to be. And him and Zach Wheeler, it was both their first times going with these long, long seasons going into the postseason, pitching into November, not having a regular spring training to get you ready for it. I get all of that. But on the biggest stage, it's the biggest spotlight. And Aaron Nola was not great on the biggest stage this year, or even the second biggest stage when you look at the NLCS. So, what does that mean for him going forward? What did we learn about Aaron Nola? Well, we learned he's still a really, really good pitcher, and he absolutely should be one of the top two guys in this rotation. You can win a World Series with Aaron Nola as one of your top two pitchers. Firmly believe that, and I don't think you can debate that after this year. But you're going to need more depth because when you get to the end of the road, he's not as reliable on the big stage in the big moments. He was big early in the postseason against the Cardinals, in a situation against the Braves, in the playoff clinching game against the Houston Astros, all of that stuff. And we're going to discuss one of those when we talk about a seminal moment of the year. But you get to the World Series and you collapse, people are going to talk about that forever. Just look at Clayton Kershaw and Justin Verlander and how they were talked about before the Dodgers won their World Series back in 2020 and what the Astros did this year in 2022. Yeah, those guys, even being some of the greatest pitchers of all time, were made fun of and much maligned about their playoff appearance. So Aaron Nola, that's something that you're going to have to work on and settle into, and maybe conditioning a little bit different now that you know what it takes to get to the end of the road and the end of a long playoff run. The big moment for him, and he had big moments in the postseason too. For Aaron Nola, the third to final game of the year. It was the first game of that series down in Houston. It was on October 3rd, and it set the Philadelphia Phillies up to clinch a playoff berth at night for the first time since 2011, the first time in 11 years. It was because of Aaron Nola. Don't get me wrong. I know the Houston Astros weren't exactly fighting for anything, but they were playing some of their starters. And even the Houston Astros not playing for anything are a super dangerous team. We saw that in the World Series. They're the best team in baseball this year. So, yeah, that was a huge moment for Aaron Nola, and he was absolutely dominant. It's as good as I've ever seen him look, ever, at any point. Complete games against the Marlins, one hitters, this, that, and the other thing. The best I've ever seen Aaron Nola look was that October 3rd game in Houston against the Astros to take care of business and put the Philadelphia Phillies in the playoffs. So, yeah, that's his seminal moment of the year. And what do I give Aaron Nola for 2022? I've got to give him a B plus. I know that B plus might seem a little high. I want to maybe go B, but then I think about the best strikeout to walk ratio in the majors, the bounce back year, being your guy for large stretches, ending the September Nola debate when he did what he needed to do to get the Philadelphia Phillies in the playoffs. That's all really, really good, and that puts him firmly at a B plus. He's right below an elite level season for me, and I think he put it together if you take out what happened in the World Series, but I can't totally annul that from the record book. So that's where I'm going with Aaron Nola, a B plus for Nola, and hopefully he'll turn in. If Zach Wheeler and him turn in Cy Young caliber seasons together, because it felt like last year it was Wheeler and Nola wasn't that good. 2018 it was Nola, but Wheeler wasn't here. This year they were both kind of good, but both kind of streaky, and Wheeler has some injuries. If they could turn in one of those great seasons together, wow, this team's going to be so, so good. And they already were, even though they didn't do that in 2022. But yeah, B plus for Aaron Nola. That's his season review. Now, coming up, we're going to wrap up Friday's episode like we do for pretty much all Friday's episodes and going to continue to throughout the offseason. Off the poll, a poll question is going to be posted on Twitter for the weekend. And I'm going to get your responses on what you think about free agents who don't play shortstop. I'll explain coming up next as we wrap up today's Locked On Phillies. All right, I do want to tell you about Simply Safe again, though. I tell you about them all the time because Simply Safe is one of our favorite sponsors, my favorite sponsors, because, well, they protect the things you love and care about. For me, it's my mom and my dog and my childhood home. For you, it could be your kids, your spouse, your family in general, your grandparents, your belongings. You could have a lot of expensive stuff at your house that you don't want people to take, and you got to have good security for that. You don't have to put it in a vault. You don't have to go to Fort Knox and have it behind one of those big safes with a wheel or whatever like that. No, just call Simply Safe. They have customizable home security, so you can get sensors on windows, cameras, everything, lights that flip on, everything like that. All of the good stuff for security. It's high tech stuff, so they know the difference between, I don't know, you forgot your keys and you're jingling with the lock as opposed to someone breaking in. Oh, your kid threw something through the window instead of someone trying to break in late at night to steal your stuff. So there's that. And the reason they know that stuff is also because they have 24/7 monitoring. They have agents who will call you anytime if anything goes wrong, and you can get a hold of them anytime. Simply Safe is awesome. And they're even cutting you a deal because you listen to Locked On Phillies. So if you go to simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb, they'll give you 50% off on a new Simply Safe security system. That's their biggest offer all year when it comes to sales that they offer. So go ahead, check them out. Locked on ML, simplysafe.com/lockedonmlb rather, because there's no safe like Simply Safe. All right, it's time for Off the Poll. And in Off the Poll, I'm going to ask you about, well, let me explain what it is first. We're going to ask a poll question on Twitter at LO_Phillies. I'll retweet it from at Connor Thomas 975. Make sure you're following both my personal account and Locked On Phillies on Twitter so you can keep up with all of our content. It's where I tweet out all of our episodes. And make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing, all of that good stuff on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. But off the poll, I post the poll question. I don't tell you my thoughts today. I'll tell you them on Monday. That way I don't mislead you or kind of lead the witness, if you will, into picking what I want. I want you unbiased. I want your own clean, pure thoughts as to what you're looking at. And we've talked a lot about shortstop, but this weekend, I want our off the poll question to be about the other guys. When you look at other opportunities for the Philadelphia Phillies to sign away from the shortstop position, who are you most interested in? There's a couple options that I'm going to put out here because you can only have 4, unfortunately. So the 4 that I'm going to put out there, I'm going to say Carlos Rodon as a starting pitcher. I'm going to put out Masataka Yoshida, who we talked about, as a corner outfielder, posted from his team in Japan, the Buffaloes over there in Japan. I'm going to go ahead and pick relief pitcher Craig Kimbrell to see if there's interest in going ahead and getting him to be a closer. 34 years of age, 3.0 WAR in the 2022 season. And finally, we're going to go with Carlos Rodon, starting pitcher, 30 years old, 11.1 WAR, the best starting pitcher available on the market by WAR standards, but we know how good that Justin Verlander was this year. We know how good Clayton Kershaw was this year. Just absolutely incredible work by those guys. So Carlos Rodon, though, seems like the most interesting option age-wise. Kershaw 35, Verlander 40. So Rodon, Segura, Masataka Yoshida, and Craig Kimbrell as the guys that you're looking at for potential options for this off the poll. So I'm going to list those all out and see what the interest is in those guys, different positions for all of them, where your mind goes outside of the shortstop position. Just some ancillary stuff as we get into a fun weekend and keep our eyes on some free agent stuff because we have some movement around Major League Baseball. Any breaking news, I'll let you know. But it was a fun episode of Locked On Phillies. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Now make your second listen Locked On Sports Today. And Locked On Sports Today covers the biggest breaking news in all of sports, around the world of sports. Check them out, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, all the places that you get Locked On Phillies every day. So thank you for a fun week again of Locked On Phillies, and I will talk to you again on Monday.